and welcome to Open Source Friday, the show where we talk to maintainers about the apps and projects that they're maintaining. Um, Today, I'm super stoked to have Becca on the show from OpenSauced, here to talk to us all things open source. And in addition to that, here to tell us about the Intro to Open Source course that she helped create for OpenSauced. So, if you're anything like me, and you have never contributed to open source before, you're very scared and scared for a plethora of reasons. I know, like, I didn't submit my first open source contribution until earlier this year, and it felt so thrilling and gratifying. And I was like, wow, I didn't break anything. And of course, you're not going to break anything because repositories have, like rules and guardrails to make sure that nothing is broken in production. But let me bring up Becca on stage so she can tell us all about herself. Hi, Becca.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm super excited to be here today. I
Yeah.
am the developer experience lead at OpenSauce, like you said, and I have been, I'm a career changer. So I haven't been in tech forever. I've been in, I think this is my fourth or fifth year. I taught college
Same.
before, see? And I feel like it is daunting, like making that first open source contribution, especially for career changers. I talk to a lot of different career changers about it. And like a lot of us came from different careers where we had spent a lot of time doing things and we felt really confident in the things that we were doing. And then when you
Yes.
move over, you have to be a beginner all over again. And
Yes.
it feels really nerve wracking once you're coming from there because you're like, I knew what I was doing before and I have no idea now. Like, what if I mess it up? But like you said, there's all those guardrails in place so that we don't mess things up. And I think that
Exactly.
making sure that people know that, there's a good experience out there for you. It's just waiting for you to jump right in.
Exactly. And I think, like, a lot of times, especially like as a newer ish, mid-level ish dev, and even like especially newer devs, like, we don't know that we're not just going to break production. We don't know that the code that's like locally on our machine is just locally to us, like it's not even a part of the code base. And even like when we're going to a new repository, a brand new repository, sometimes we're just, I know, like, for me, I was so overwhelmed by the choices I had. I'm just like, what issue should I even start with? A, and B, what do these words mean? Because sometimes software engineers, they speak as an engineer, not necessarily breaking things down as needed. So, like, I think like a lot of those contribute to like all the trouble that I had contributing to open source. But hi, everyone, welcome. We have Becca on the show from OpenSauced, here to talk to us all about open source, right? So I wanted to ask you though, Becca, how did you get involved in the open source community? How did you become a maintainer?
I don't know. Is the short answer, I guess. I that maybe the longer answer is I'm a boot camp grad myself. And so some of the early projects I did, my blog is I'm technically the maintainer of my blog, which is an open source project. And it was open source because I didn't know that
Ah,
it could be closed source at the time. Like there were
all
a
right.
lot of hurdles there. Like time I didn't even know that you could run a project locally. So you'll see like
Oh,
I
wow.
pushed commits that made no sense because I wanted to be able to view them because I didn't know that I could run my project locally. So if you go back in my history, you can definitely check that out. So and then some of the things like I started like very low level as a maintainer and I have a markdown repository for resources for moms in tech. So I found that like coming
Mm.
into tech, I learned how to code when my youngest was about 8 months old, and I have 4 kids. And so, one of the most helpful things for me was finding other moms who are in tech, just because I could kind of
Mm.
see, like, okay, like, what is the journey like for you? Because it's really difficult. And I feel like I shouldn't be doing this. And this doesn't even make any sense whatsoever in my life. And so then I just started a markdown repository. And so I opened that up for contributions. Like, where are good places to work if you're a mom in tech? What are some resources? What are good boot camps? Because, like for me, one of the most important things is I have a flexible schedule and that
Yeah.
I have support. Like, if I got to go pick up my kid because they're sick, I don't want to work for a company that's going to say, like, no, you can't go pick up your kid, or that fires you when you come back from maternity leave, because that happens. I've known quite a few moms that's happened to. So
Oh, wow.
for me, it started there. And then when the pandemic hit, I had been working as a front end developer for about, I think, 8 months at that point, and I lost my job. Um, so I was just really looking for community. And that's when I started Virtual Coffee, which
Virtual coffee.
is a dental community. And we met a couple of times a week, just shared what was going on in our lives. We had questions about what was happening in tech, or just like personally. It was just a really great way to connect with people when we were all isolated. And it still is. We're still going. But that started in April of 2020. And then October of 2020, we did our first Hacktoberfest event, which was really pivotal
Mm.
community, but also from my experience in open source. That was the first time that I really was actively involved in maintaining a project that had a lot of contributions. So that was both on the Virtual Coffee website, and I was working on a postpartum wellness app at the time as well, which was a React Native project. Not fluent in React Native, but I was going for it, just playing it out, it through with contributors. And it was really inspiring to see all of the people that were willing to put their time and effort into these things and to learn
Mhm.
alongside with me. And that's not true for every project, but for me, it was a really great experience because I learned a ton by being a maintainer. And then my experience has just kind of grown through that. And I think, like, being a second career tech person, it's been important to me to provide space for people to find their journey through tech and to utilize open source to do that.
Nice. I love that story so much, and I love how your very first open source project was a markdown file for other moms who are looking for resources to make their transition into technology. Like, whenever I think about an open source project, that never, it never occurred to me that, oh yeah, a markdown file can be open source, but it can. Because it's a list of resources that anybody can use. They can fork it, they can clone it, they can go to it, and they can contribute to it as well to add their own resources. And I think it's just like whenever we think about open source projects, I know for me, I always think about these big, large, complex projects that requires a ton of code and a ton of maintenance. But it doesn't always have to be that way. And I think thank you for highlighting that because it literally just shifted my mind.
Yeah, and I think, like, one of the things that you said before really resonates with me. There's a learning curve that comes to open source with the language
Yeah.
that comes out of it, right? Like, there are terms that you need to understand, there are processes that you need to understand, and I know that a lot of people say markdown is not a code contribution, but at the same time, you need technical skills to be able to do that. You have to know what it means to fork and clone a project, what a
Yes.
commit is. Like, these are all new skills for anybody really that's outside of tech, and it can be hard to, you're not just like navigating the new vocabulary that comes with being a part of open source, but you're also navigating that process and the steps that it takes to get there. And so I think, like, decreasing those barriers to entry is really important to making sure that we have sustainable open source.
I love it. I love it. So like tell us about this intro to open source course that like I think you created for open sauce.
So Tejas Kumar, I was the initial author of the course. And so when I came on at OpenSauced in April, I think, this is one of the things I was like, okay, like Brian Douglas, who's our
Yeah.
CEO, is really amazing. Was like, hey, like, we've got this course that's out there. And so trying to shape, like, what does the contributor journey look for people? Like, this is a good
Mm.
starting place, especially for people who have never done any open source. So it gives you context and information about, like, what is open source, why would you want to do open source, and then walks you through getting your first contribution there. And I think, like, that can be a pivotal point for people. So you find that first contribution, but then also, like, you realize that this is just one step in the journey. If you're a person that's learning tech or learning how to code or contributing for the first time, this is just probably the start of a journey to somewhere else. And so, like, how do
Yeah.
you emphasize that and highlight your skills and show your growth throughout that process? And then
Yeah.
so really the second part of the course is like, okay, now you've contributed for the first time. What's next? How do you showcase what you've done to other people? Because that's going to be a core component about where you go next.
Interesting. So the course literally takes you through like Git, pushing, pulling, repository, cloning, forking, and then like going through the entire process of like submitting a first contribution. And then it's just like, okay, you did that. Great. Here's what's next. I kind of like that because it doesn't just leave you like, okay, now you know how to do it. Go figure out the rest. It's just like, okay, here's how you go to the next step and what you need to do.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the important things. And I had Rachel Neighbors on a Twitter space a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about
Yeah.
the importance of like developing that contributor journey. And that's something they verbalized it in a really, really nice way for me to really see as a maintainer, like what is the contributor journey across our repositories. And so for us
Mm.
at OpenSauce, it's not just leaving folks after they've made their first contribution, it's continuing to support them across that journey. So we have the intro course. And beyond the intro course, first of all, like everybody will get a PR on the intro course if they complete the directions. But there are certainly options for updating the intro course, and we've added some support for translations as well because we want to
Oh.
make sure that it's accessible to lots of different folks in a way that's maintainable for us and our community team of maintainers. So shout out
Oh,
to
wow.
Chrissy and Ayu, who are our new community maintainers who were
Thank you.
contributors first. And then we have the Pizzaverse repository, which is again a fun markdown repository. It's very low stakes to enter, but it's getting folks practicing the skills that you need to continue to contribute to open source.
What is the Pizzaverse? It sounds fun. I'm curious about that
Yeah,
one.
I'll go ahead and drop the link to that in the chat. Oh, what did I do?
Okay.
I didn't copy the right thing here. Here we go. So I'll put that in here. So the
Okay.
Pizzaverse. So at OpenSauced, we are pizza themed, and so most of our naming falls in conventions with that. But for me, it was like, okay, so if we look at the contributor in the contributor's journey, we start at the intro course. Now, where do they go from there? They can go straight to docs, and I
Mm.
think that docs is a valid place for lots of folks to go. But sometimes it's just you need to get that practice of getting in the flow of um forking, cloning, committing, and PRs, right? So you need a
Yes.
little bit more practice. And so this is an opportunity to do that, but in a fun way. So it is very delicious. There are lots of great recipes in there. Somebody posted a tikka masala pizza recipe, which I really want to make. But you can add things like a fun fact about pizza, a recipe, let people know about the regional styles of pizza that are in your area. And again,
I
it's to
love
get
it.
practice of okay, this is how we do things, and then from there you can move on to what comes next. And in my mind, that could be our docs repository, that could be in our app at OpenSauce. But the point is, like, we're creating a space for first time contributors to continue to grow in each of the repositories that we have at OpenSauce.
I love it. So it's literally a journey, right? So they start with the intro to open source, and then they can go to the Pizzaverse to submit something fun like a pizza recipe, or something relating to pizza. And it's also getting the contributors used to the process, like the Git flow and how to work on GitHub. That's brilliant. I love it. I love how approachable it is, how accessible it is, and how simple the concept is because it's focusing on those core principles of open source, which is, Git.
Yeah, yeah, and I've been, like, really inspired by the Astro team and all of the things that they're doing and how great their onboarding is for contributors, so I've definitely been
Yeah.
spying lots of Astro docs, and we have lots of opportunities, I think, in our docs for improvement, and that's gonna get an overhaul pretty soon to provide more space and to increase that path and that journey. But it's really great too that all of our engineers are on board with, like, creating issues and
Hmm.
creating good first issues. And I know, like, one of my new teammates, Nick Taylor, he joined us a couple of weeks ago, has been he'll like create a good first issue and really walk contributors through like exactly what they need to do. So providing the answer in the actual issue to make sure that that we provide them a space where they feel supported and they're able to grow. And the idea is you take one good first issue, or maybe it takes you a couple to get really comfortable with what you're doing. And then you're able or interested in taking on something that's a little bit more challenging. And I think, that's an important part of the conversation and the journey too. Like, don't continue to take good first issues everywhere. You want to show your
Mm.
growth in what you're doing. So, get comfortable, but then push yourself to do the next thing, because that's where you're going to show your growth. That's also how you're going to grow, right? And
Yeah.
expand your skill set and understanding, because I don't know anybody that's ever been super comfortable in a dev job. Like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing all the time every day,
Yeah.
right? It's just not dev life.
It's not. It's not. It's literally the opposite. Just, oh my gosh, it's not working. Oh my gosh, why is it working? Literally. So, I'm curious. What is? I know we've been talking a lot about open sauce. Assuming everyone knows what open sauce is. So, like, what is open sauce? And can you show it to us if you want? Like, I've been on open sauce before, but I just didn't know where to go, what
Yeah.
to do,
Let me
how.
if I can type correctly and talk at the same time. That's one of the most challenging skills
Yeah,
out
that's
there.
okay. I can go through
Let
some of
me
the comments while you're looking for that. So I love what Steven said. He said, "This is exactly what I needed to hear. So glad there are maintainers that are out there trying to help." And I agree. Going to a Pizzaverse repository and submitting a pizza recipe, that's something I can definitely do. And it would definitely lower the barrier to entry and also lower my anxiety and my fears. Because I'm like, oh, pizza, I know how to do that. And you just submit it and you're good to go. Someone else said, "Hi there. So there is a pizza repo to play with your first open source pull request." Yes. So it is called, it's our open source /Pizzaverse on GitHub. And essentially, after you complete the intro to open source course, it leads you to the Pizzaverse repository where you can contribute your own pizza recipe. And the goal is to get you used to the process of contributing to code on GitHub by, using Markdown. I love it.
Yeah, so I can talk you through what OpenSauce
Yeah.
does. I can share my screen if you want to add it, but we don't. There we go. So this is kind of what my screen looks like. But I'll talk to you a little bit more about what we do at OpenSauce. And so we kind of have like two user journeys here, right? Like, we want to support contributors and we want to support maintainers. So the goal here is
Okay.
to create sustainable and positive open source experiences for everyone. So for contributors, it's about finding your next contribution, highlighting your journey and your growth, and being able to do that in a way that supports where you want to be going. Okay, so if you want to land a job, finding that path to that job. If you want to upskill, finding that path there. For maintainers, it's about helping to decrease that cognitive load that you often have to maintain a project, and finding
Mm,
what the health of your project is, connecting you with contributors who work for your project, right? Because sometimes we find that like there are people that come and they're one-time contributors, which is great. Like, there's nothing wrong with a one-time contributor, but as a maintainer, it makes it easier if you have people who are sustainable contributors who continue to contribute past
I
that
see.
one time. Because oftentimes when that happens, you're decreasing, you don't have to answer as many questions, you don't have to, that person is well versed in the ways of doing things. And so this is my OpenSauced account. And so you can see there's different things that I'm tracking here. I have lists that I'm looking at, and or this is my insight pages. So I keep
Mhm.
track of the Hacktoberfest repositories that I'm maintaining. Oh, I do have, actually, I should have clicked on that's the wrong one. Let me drop this link. So if you're new to open source, I have this repository for beginners. And
Nice.
these are a handful that includes the Pizzaverse, the intro course, our guest book for the intro course. And
Nice.
I'm trying to like find different ways to categorize the things. Um,
That's
oh,
a good
I'm
question.
sorry. Sorry about that. That's
Oh
not what I want to
no.
happen. As we
It's
complete tasks,
live.
are we allowed to post it to LinkedIn? Um, I would say like I'm not sure exactly what you're talking about, but I say post everything to LinkedIn that you're comfortable, like build in public in a way that works for you, show that growth. And actually that kind of like takes me to this highlights page. So We have different ways to create highlights, and this is all about like documenting your journey. I am like a huge huge on storytelling. Like I think that storytelling is the most powerful thing that we can do to connect to other people. And I've got an hour and
Mm.
a half talk on that, so I'm not going to
Oh,
give that right
wow.
now. But I will say, like, this offers people a glimpse into the things that you're doing. So if you want to, you can create a highlight. So this is Nick Taylor. He's actually my teammate. He has a pull request that he wants to highlight because he feels like this adds a lot of value. And so if
Mm.
you go to my profile, I'm gonna like a shameless plug here. You can come follow me, please, on OpenSauced. Um, and you can see the different highlights that I have. And so we're all about recognizing different forms of contribution. One of the ways is I do a lot of blog writing. So I actually have a couple highlights I'm going to create today. But it shows like, okay, these are the blog posts. This is how I communicate the work that I'm doing. You can also add your pull requests. You can add issues as well. And the idea is like, look, let's showcase how we're well rounded contributors because it's not just about PRs, but it's about all of the things that we do to make open source sustainable and show that
Yeah.
we're good communicators. We have leadership skills, mentorship skills. And I'm a firm believer that you can mentor at any stage, whether you're, if you've been doing it for a day, you're a day ahead of the person that starts today, right? Like
I
there's
agree.
always information that you have to give. And yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So what I love about open source is that it seems like how on GitHub you have the contributing grid, the green squares
Mhm.
that everyone obsesses over. So it's kind of zooming into the green squares and making the work that you're doing more, visible. So it's not just about green squares, it's just like, okay, this is exactly what I'm doing and what those green squares relate to.
Yeah,
So
it's about redefining that, right? Like, what are
yes.
meaningful contributions? Because I think that a lot of folks get hung up on the green squares, and there's
Yes.
lots of value in green squares, right? But like, there's more value outside of it too. And I think, especially as a second career person, like, I understand that the majority of my strengths are the things that are not ever captured on those green squares. And so I need to
Yes.
highlight that in other ways.
I love it. I'm definitely going to be using OpenSauce now, especially as I plan to become a more active contributor as I get over my fears. I think this is awesome. So, like, what is OpenSauce doing for Hacktoberfest? Anything special?
So we are in the midst, or we're at the tail end of our 100 days of OSS campaign, which is,
Mhm.
let's see, this is on our docs repo. Do I have this pulled up? Here we go. Give me 1 second, and I'll also drop this link here. But we started this, I think, July 24th, and that was working 100 days backwards from the end of Hacktoberfest. And I'm also going to stop. Maybe I'll share my screen just for one more second. But so this was inspired by 100 days of code, which I did when I was in boot camp as well. I think I made it
Yes.
to 300 days. I was like super proud of
Oh,
myself.
wow.
But I think like the focus on 100 days of OSS is to be able to explore open source in many different ways. And we encourage people to take breaks and to take care of themselves, but it's not just about like committing every single day. It's about exploring how you can benefit and how you can contribute to open source. And so you might give a talk or a presentation. You might help triage issues. Triage, I feel like, is a hard word to say
It
out
is a
loud.
hard word to say.
So the idea is like we're presenting, hey, like these contributions, there's lots of different ways to contribute. And so we're at
Mhm.
the tail end of that, but we've had some workshops. We're doing Tuesday Twitter spaces at 10:30 a.m. Eastern. And we have a lot of resources out there for folks who are interested in getting into open source, participating in Hacktoberfest for the first time, and making sure that we support folks through that by creating that contributor journey throughout there, and also like
Yeah.
having those conversations with maintainers too. First time maintainers, experienced maintainers, but knowing that like it's really important to support maintainers because this is often a time where they feel overwhelmed as well. So like we want to make sure that we have that um, well-rounded thanks, Jessica. Support for everybody so we can grow a healthy and positive open source space.
Nice. I love it. I love how excited you are about this as well. I can tell that you truly enjoy doing it. And so another question I have for you is you mentioned a guest book. Is that a public repo? And what is it for open source? The open source
Okay,
guest book?
so the guest book is, oh yay, sorry, I just get super distracted by the comments. Someone's on day 57 of
Oh.
100 days. Yay. Um, so the guest book is that's where you make your first contribution from the intro course. So it takes you through,
Oh,
it walks you through those steps and it allows you to make that contribution there. So you can see everybody that's contributed through the course. And it's been a really great experience. We've onboarded a couple of new maintainers who are, I think both of them are career transitioners as well. So we have a really great, kind, and empathetic team of folks who are willing to spend their time making sure that it is a safe and supportive space for folks to contribute for the first time.
nice. I love it, Becca. This is also great. And just to clarify, open source is free, right? Like anyone can sign up, anyone can use it.
Yeah, absolutely. Everything is free on there. So if you complete Hacktoberfest, we are actually a Hacktoberfest sponsor this year. You get all of our paid features for free. But I just want to say that all of the paid features, I think currently, they're just limits on what the free features are. So
Okay.
you can have extra lists, you can have extra insight pages, you can have
Oh, gotcha.
connections with people. So we have free features out there. But if you have signed up for Hacktoberfest, then once you complete Hacktoberfest, you'll get an email from DigitalOcean, I believe, which you're offered the free tier of OpenSauced for a year. So if you're interested in exploring what those features are, you definitely can claim those features now. I think we had 60 new folks just this morning claim that. So we're very excited to be able to offer that. But you can test, I think, all of our features for free right now.
Wow, I love it. So if you're a new open source contributor, be sure to check out OpenSauced. Go to their GitHub organization. There you will find the intro repository, which is an intro to open source. Then you go to the guest book to submit your first contribution. And then you go to the Pizzaverse to submit like a pizza recipe just to get the practice in of like, making the contribution on GitHub to remove the fear that we all have of contributing to open source. This has been such a great chat, Becca. Is there anything else that you would like to share or plug before we kind of wrap up?
Yeah, I would say definitely check out those repositories that we dropped in here. And if you're afraid, we've got really nice people. So feel free to ask questions. Like, I want to emphasize that, like, we are very open to answering your questions, and there's no such thing as a bad question. I think of like any question as feedback for me, like, okay, this is something that we haven't answered. And so we can provide answers for this, whether that's documentation or a blog post. But your questions make it easier for the contributor behind you because as a maintainer, I can improve the things that we're doing by answering your questions in some way. So feel free, ask those questions. We're here to support you and check us out on Tuesday for our X spaces.
Nice. So, a few questions. Is this recorded? Yes, the session is recorded. You can find the recording on YouTube, LinkedIn, and I believe Twitch as well. How do you sign up for Hacktoberfest? Becca, I'll have you take that one.
Yeah, somebody I think posted in the chat too. So hacktoberfest.com, you can just go ahead and sign up through DigitalOcean, and any of the open source rewards they'll extend to you through once you receive your fourth contribution.
Yep. And you can go to hacktoberfest.com to sign up directly there and search for any GitHub repository that has the Hacktoberfest label. I believe there's a topic for Hacktoberfest on GitHub as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important to note. So don't just contribute to any repository. It has to have that topic, or the issue needs to be labeled Hacktoberfest or Hacktoberfest accepted. So that's to help support maintainers to make sure that maintainers who don't have the capacity to handle Hacktoberfest contributions are protected during that time.
Yeah. And is OpenSauce looking for any contributors to their projects?
Absolutely. We're always looking for contributors. And you can check that I think all of our repositories or most of them are opted into Hacktoberfest right now. That beginner list that I shared with you has 3 of our repositories on there, but also our app is accepting Hacktoberfest submissions. I think our hot repo is as well. So you can definitely check those out if you go to github.com/open-sauced.
Yes. And I think that's a wrap. Thanks so much, Becca, for coming on. Thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in and asking wonderful questions. This has been Open Source Friday, and see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.